Hi again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. Just about exactly 3 months ago now, I posted a video on how to propagate lavender from cuttings. And at the time, I did these from cuttings using a humidity dome. I also had started previously some lavender from seed for comparison. Well, all of those have grown up, bushed out, and they're flowering now. So I wanted to give you a quick update on how those look now, how I've taken care of them in the meantime, and how the comparison really is between growing them from cuttings and what they look like when you grow them from seed. So hang tight, I'll get some close-ups here. Starting with the ones I did from cuttings, this is the tray here, and I'm going to back off now to show you just how uniform this turned out. That's the kind of the point of doing them from cuttings. Aside from getting quite a fast result, you get a very uniform result. So looking here, you can see that from one side to the next, this entire tray is pretty much all the same size, the same branching, the same color, the same shape, the same everything all the way up and down. So you get a very, very consistent result going from cuttings. Now let me show you one that is done by seed. Now a comparison over to a tray that I did from seed, and these are nice too, but let's back up a little bit so I can show you the kind of difference it makes to come from cuttings versus to come from seed. And you should see already looking at this tray that there's quite a difference in the variability of the plants. Just moving this over a bit, and you can see that some of the ones in the front are a little bit smaller, some of the ones in the back are a little bit larger. The timing of the flowering is a little bit different, so some of them are further into flowering, some of them are just developing buds now. The color of the foliage, some are grayer, some are greener. Total branching, size, everything is a little less uniform, and this is kind of what you would expect coming from seed rather than coming from cuttings. The cuttings were all taken from the exact same plant at the exact same stage and grown rather quickly. The seeds took a little bit longer to develop from a small seed, and really genetically they're sisters. They're not genetically identical, they're similar. On to care instructions. The question of how did I get from a single unbranched cutting to this stage here, and the answer is by pinching. Now pinching is going to look a bit like this, just taking your thumb and your forefinger and just pinching off a branch. And early on, that's exactly what I did with all of these, and they were only single branches at that point, so I pinched them just by hand. At this stage here, probably because there's so many of those and it's going to take a little while to pinch it all by hand, what I would do is just ponytail it like this, and then cut straight across to create branching. So that there, every place where I've cut across there will now branch a little bit lower, and it will make an even bushier, a bushier plant going onwards. And once again, just ponytail like that, and then cut like that, and that's an easy way to pinch them straight across. And I didn't get them at exactly the same level, but they should branch relatively uniformly from a cut like that. A couple other questions I usually get at this stage, and I did explain it in the other video, but I'll explain it again just so you don't have to go searching, is that the soil that I used in this container was just a mix of composted bark mulch and shredded wood fiber. It looks quite dark now because some algae has grown across the top and it's a bit wet, but that's what it is. You could certainly use peat and perlite as a mix, or any other kind of potting soil. That's just what I have on hand. I don't give a lot of difference between this and any other general perennial that I use, or even my roses. I use the same mix for everything. I usually incorporate some slow release fertilizer right into the soil, and then I water using a water-soluble fertilizer. That's the type that comes in the little crystals. You put it into your watering can, it completely dissolves, and then you feed using that just to top up the nutrient levels as it grows. Only if I see that the foliage is coming up a bit pale or a little bit yellowish, then I'll top up with that liquid feed fertilizer. One more thing I have to address about growing lavender well in a pot is how much to water it. Now, we always talk about lavender as a drought-tolerant perennial, and that's true in the landscape. where it has a root system that can go into the soil and it can look for moisture. In a pot, that's not true at all. In fact, I'm going to give you some advice that's very counter to what you may know about lavender, which is as long as you have a freely draining soil media, freely draining potting soil, go ahead and water your lavender generously. And even in the off season, if you have it growing in a pot and you're growing it in a greenhouse or a sunroom, don't treat it like it's gone dormant, because lavender really doesn't go that dormant if it has sufficient temperatures. Continue to water it, and water it generously, or at least check on the watering quite frequently. What you will find is that if it's lacking water, and this one is lacking water right now, but I can see that it's starting to lose the luster of its leaves. It's starting to turn more grayish than normal, and it's gone limp. If you let that advance too far, and I'm going to say even particularly in the fall and winter, if you let that advance too far, it will lead to susceptibility to rot. Those leaves that have lost their pressure, they will become susceptible to things like botrytis, which is a disease that plagues lavender really badly in the winter. So watch your watering, be more generous than you would otherwise think. Just to wrap up the video, let me show you that I have another batch of lavender under a dome, under grow lights right now, just in its early stage of rooting, because I'm trying to get together enough of these to put in kind of a formal lavender planting for next year. The steps on this will be exactly the same. Once these have rooted, I'll go ahead and transplant them into larger pots. I'll pinch them a number of times. I'll feed them with slow release fertilizer and with liquid feed fertilizer, and I'll hold them over winter until I get them into the ground next spring. So that's the timing on it. All right, thanks so much for watching my video today on taking lavender by cuttings versus seed. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions on growing lavender at all, let me know in the comments below the video.